Hey YouTube, what's going on? Today we're going to talk a little bit about the new movie Nosferatu, which is a remake of a 1928 film that was silent, German impressionist film. If you ever went to college and took a film course, you probably saw Nosferatu. But there was a film called Shadow of the Vampire, starring Willem Dafoe, which was about the making of Nosferatu. It starred John Malkovich.
My name is John Malkovich.
I don't sound anything like that.
No, you sound exactly like this.
And the premise was that Max Schreck, who played Count Orlok in the original film, was actually a vampire. And so it was a really cool movie. The look of Count Orlok, most famously, was also in Salem's Lot. And there was a new one of those that just came out. So I can understand if that's confusing. It's like, wait a minute, is it this? Is it that? So, no, it's not. This is something completely different. So, I will preface this with, I absolutely love the movie. Robert Eggers is the director. He did The Norseman, which is the only other movie he's done that I've seen. I didn't see The Witch or The Lighthouse one or any of those other ones. I just saw The Norseman, which was manly as hell and starred Alexander Skarsgård. Anna Taylor-Joy was in it, but that was at the time when she was in every movie, so that's not a surprise. This is fun because Bill Skarsgård is in this one, so he's slowly making his way through all the Skarsgårds. But this is a remake of the 1928 silent film. That film was actually Bram Stoker's Dracula. The funny thing about that film was they didn't have the rights to call it Bram Stoker's Dracula, so the plot is almost identical to Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they couldn't use any of the names. So there's no Mina Harker, there's no John Harker, there's no Renfield, there's no Count Dracula. All the names have been changed, so Thomas is, John is now Thomas, and Mina is now Ellen or Helen or whatever they called her in this movie. And Dracula is most famously known as Count Orlok, so that was their way around it. Nosferatu, much like Bram Stoker's Dracula, is in the public domain, so this film could have been Dracula if they wanted to. Universal does not exclusively own the rights to Dracula, and you can make a Dracula movie without paying Universal, because it is public domain in America. It's also public domain, I think, everywhere in the world. I think Germany, it was just had to be 50 years or 60 years after he died or whatever, so they could have made Dracula, but they didn't. They specifically remade the 1928 film. I thought this was great. The reason is that it doesn't bring any of the pretext of Dracula into the story, and you're able to just sort of do that movie. And so I thought that this was the most Dracula movie ever made, in reference to Bram Stoker. Some people may not know what I'm saying by that, and that's totally fine. So when I was in college, I took a bunch of different courses. One course was an English course called Literature's Response to Science. And it was about popular novelists had written books in the 19th century about the Industrial Revolution in England and how that impacted the world. Most famously are Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Those two books are the most common reference to, the old world versus science and the modernization and how that changes things. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had some Sherlock Holmes stories that approached that. There were, The Time Machine, The Invisible Man, a lot of that stuff all was kind of in that zone. But what's really kind of cool to me is how that course was what introduced me to the book. And so I digested the films through my understanding of the book from the point of view of literature's response to technology. So the scene where Jonathan's using a typewriter versus when he visits Dracula and he's doing everything by hand with pen and ink quill and things like that. There are these very real comparisons, and how Dracula is sort of trapped by old world, mysticism and gypsies and their superstitions, and they're clutching to the religion, whereas the modern world was starting to abandon religion and God in a bigger way, and this was an area of opportunity for him, which led him to wanting to take a property in London. I thought that really no Dracula movie had kind of honed in on that, because it was always eclipsed by love story, which I do not care for. In my opinion, Bram Stoker's Dracula does not contain a love story. Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula very much was a love story, which I didn't care for. And that's been prevalent in the Dracula mythos for a long time. Bela Lugosi's Dracula was a very striking-eyed individual. And so there was that sort of, the fierce gaze. And then Christopher Lee was a very attractive man and considered, women loved him and they swooned for him. And they really hyped up the attraction. And that went all the way up until... they were all still scary, but there was that sort of women are lured to him. And then they did a play in 1978, which became a movie in 1979 starring Frank Langella, the great Frank Langella, as Dracula. And that was sexy Dracula. He was tan, he was good looking, 6'4", King of Bayonne. And so that was really when, from that point on, officially, Dracula had to be sexy. And I don't get that. I get it for the play, and I get how that works, but... Bram Stoker never did that. And when you go back to the 1928 film Nosferatu, Count Orlok is creepy as hell. He's like a little troll demon. Well, I mean, he's not little, he's tall as hell, but he's creepy. He's not attractive on any level. And so when I found out that they were doing this movie, I was kind of like, all right, another Dracula movie, but not this time, not even Dracula. But then I found out it was that dude, and I was like, all right, well, that would probably be cool looking, because he's really good with cinematography, which we'll talk about. And then Bill Skarsgård was going to be Count Orlok. And in my head, I just heard Pennywise. The bald, the teeth, the high squeaky voice. I thought that's what we were going to get, like a Pennywise-esque Orlok, very similar to how Willem Dafoe portrayed him. Kind of rat-like. That is not what we got. Bill Skarsgård is terrifying in this movie. To an uncomfortable extent. I'm uncomfortable watching him on screen. You'd never know it was him. You never would guess. You would never in a million years guess if you didn't know. So it was head to toe prosthetics, even up to the vampire wang, which there is. You get to see Count's Orlok flapping in the wind, and he's terrifying, man. Very different look for Count Orlok. He does have some hair kind of rotted off. The body is semi-decayed. So he kind of has a little bit of that look that Francis Ford Coppola went for when he was like mid-demon transformation. A very, very elongated musculature, sort of like half werewolf. And he's got a mustache. He's got a big old Vlad the Impaler mustache, kind of giving you that look because he's in Wallachia, what was Wallachia, east of Bohemia. So you very much get the sense that this was Vlad the Impaler, without expressly saying it, which, of course, Francis Ford Coppola just went right up to the forefront, was like, it's Vlad. Not Vlad, but you get the impression he could be. He wears a very similar hat to Vlad, and you could tell that when his hair was long and lush, it could have looked like that. So I did like the implication. The only difference is Vlad was like 5'6", and Bill Skarsgård's like 6'9" in this movie. He's terrifying. But it was a really cool look. They did pay a lot of homage to the big hook nose and the elongated fingers with the long creepy nails, the coat, the hat. The look is there. The ears do have a bit of a point to them and such, so you do sort of get that vibe, but Nosferatu did a great job of cinematography and folding in the why behind Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I don't think any film really got, ever. I've seen all the Bela Lugosi films. I've seen the Lon Chaney Jr. I've seen all the Hammer films. Well, not all of them, actually. But I've seen most of them. I've seen Frank's film, and of course I've seen Francis Ford Coppola's film. I don't think anybody really captured what Bram was trying to write when he wrote Count Dracula. And I think the reason is because there is always this need to make Dracula cool and a sympathetic character instead of just a manifestation of insatiable hunger or greed or what have you, which is something that they do in this film. And I think that was the right decision because it allows Dracula to be scary and unsympathetic. He's not cool enough that you like him. He's sort of like, I don't even know what you call it. Like, I guess he's sort of this archetype of just evil. It's just creepy. So there's a lot of parallels to what this Dracula is. And of course it's Orlok, but it's Dracula. By not doing a Dracula story, though, they can take as much from Bram as they want, while at the same time taking their liberties to tell this story. So, cinematography, it's mostly desaturated, but there's every frame has one central color that just booms at you. And this is something that Eggers really pushed to the forefront. Every shot of this movie could be a movie poster. For example, the scene where he's running down Main Street in, well, technically it's not London. This whole film takes place in a town in Germany, but it's supposed to be London. So it takes place in a town in Germany, a modern town, in like 1863 or whatever. He's running down the street. It's raining. Everybody's got their umbrellas up. They're all black. There's not a lot of color, but you see the purple lilacs in his hand, and he's got his hat over the lilacs instead of his head, so he's protecting the flowers. The flowers are the main focus of the shot as he's running down. Then he gives them to his wife, and she's standing there holding them. Everything in the room is desaturated. The walls are off-white. Her dress is off-white. She has long black hair. She's got pale skin, does Lily Rose Depp. But the lilacs are the only real color in that shot, and they're right in the middle. When Thomas stays in the gypsy town just outside the castle, it's snowing. Everybody's got muted maroons and blues and things on. He's got this very, very bold, creamy tan jacket, which looks very much like the 1928 Orlok jacket and hat. And his saddlebag, which is this rich leather, this tanned leather color. And he's this big, giant color moving through this party that's going on there with the music and all that stuff. And later when he's running through the castle, there is a lot of gray. He's in a white shirt. He's pale-skinned because he's been drained and all that crap. But behind him, there's a window, and the light breaking through the window is this brilliant orange. And that's the only real color in the movie. When he's with Orlok, the fireplace is the only color you see in that shot. When you're on the ship and you see the crate, the red wax seal of Dracula's or Orlok's thing is the only real color you see. This happens over and over and over again with the cinematography, and it was really, really visually interesting. So I think that was the biggest thing that I liked about watching the movie, is that there was always this one element of color just sort of smack in your face. And I really did feel that made every shot interesting in what was predominantly a movie of exposition and not a lot of action. It was a very slow movie in that way. But every shot is cool looking because of that. So, and when someone is the victim, the really only color in the scene is blood. And the blood is a very brilliant red when there is blood. We see that both in the last shot and several of the shots throughout the film. When the plague hits people, the plague is very colorful on their face. You know, you get to see a lot of the color, which brings it to the forefront, particularly on Aaron Taylor Johnson's character. It just the choice of when to use color was great from an artistic point of view. I loved it. It's the masterclass in how to shoot interesting shots. It just makes it very visually impressive. Also, the way shadow is used to constantly hide Orlok, so you never get a great shot of him for the most part. Keeps him creepy, keeps him special. I dug that too. The only time you really get a great shot of him is when he comes up out of his coffin with his wang out, and you're like, oh, that's all of him, and I didn't want to see that at all. Oh, God, okay. And you almost want to look away, because you're just like, that's not comfortable. You get a good feeling for what Nicholas Hoult is putting out there in that scene. It was just a really well-shot film. The other thing that I liked about it is there were three aspects of Bram Stoker's book that never really made it into film that this did. The first one was obviously the response to technology. You do get this sort of sense that Orlok is sick and tired of the gypsies and their rituals and their anti-vampire rituals and their strong Orthodox religion, you know, the Greek Orthodox religion that they practice. Well, it's Russian Orthodox there, I guess, but he wants to get away from that, and he feels very strongly that this town in Germany is going to have that, because we see, as they're having conversations, they have God and stuff, but they're not like super religious there. You know, it's sort of like, whatever. And so this is an escape from that, the old world. And he says, like, you know, I bet our ways seem very antiquated to you from the big city, you know. And it very much incorporates that this advancing world is not better. It's not prepared them to deal with these darknesses in the world, which are supposed to mirror the darknesses in ourselves. By losing our old superstitions, it's compromised our morality, and thus it runs rampant. And so that's also manifested by the fact that they can't contain the rat plague. When Orlok brings his rats on the ship, the actual plague gets out. It does very much mirror his being a plague, which is the other thing that I thought was really good. Dracula can't be like an inconvenience. He has to be like the worst thing that ever happened to you. And so when he arrives, he brings the rats, and the rats bring with them the plague, and that ravages this whole town. And because the town is so overcrowded, and because the streets are the way they are and everything, it spreads like wildfire. And so we see, like, if this happened in a village and things like that, they could contain this much better. But the modern world is not equipped for this plague at all, nor are they equipped to deal with Count Orlok. And I think that that was something that you never really got in the other Dracula films. So that was really cool. I enjoyed that. The other thing which I really, really, really liked was they did not do the love story. They treated it very differently. One thing Edgar said was that he was very much in the headspace with Wuthering Heights, and how Heathcliff was very possessive and kind of a douche, and you don't like him. And, you know, when he gets ultimately dumped and you know, she goes off on her own and doesn't need him anymore, that was like sort of like that spark of the woman stands on her own, kind of, you know, pre-feminist thing. That was something that he wanted to drive home with this. This is not Orlok is in love with her and she's in love with Orlok. This is, he says a great line in the movie, which is, you know, I am an affliction to the world. You are an affliction to me. You know, I cannot satiate with anything but you. Like, he's addicted to her. He needs this chick. And it is sort of this unbelievable possession that needs to happen, because he can control people's minds, make them do what he wants. He can force his will upon people. And you see this mirrored in society, where Aaron Taylor Johnson is kind of telling, you know, the main Lily Rose Depp, he's like, you need to respect me. I've been your caregiver. I've been nice. She's like, you tied me up. And he's like, I did that for your own protection. She's like, no, you did that for your own convenience. And he's like, you will be grateful that I even took pity on you and helped you out. And then he kicks her out of the house. There's this sort of men possessing women thing. And even in the beginning, Lily Rose Depp doesn't want Nicholas Hoult to go away. She needs to possess him. No, it's bad for me if you go away. She says it's bad for us, but she means it's bad for her. And then immediately she goes back into somnambulism and all that stuff. So there's always this need to possess other people for their own benefit, which is a really good capture from the Dracula novel, because there is that sense of possession. And what happens is the only people who get anywhere in this movie are people who own their own crap and take possession of themselves. There is the Van Helsing character, which is played by Willem Dafoe. I forget what his doctor's name is, but he's the Van Helsing guy. He's in there, and he needs to solve this so that he's no longer a laughingstock. He needs people to understand that he was right. So he needs to take possession of the situation so that he can drive that home. The other doctor needs to take possession of all these other people in this situation so that he can solve this problem, because he feels responsible for the health of the town and whatnot. He feels a responsibility to Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he also feels a responsibility to his former mentor, the Van Helsing character. So there's that whole aspect. Aaron Taylor Johnson needs to possess everything because he's just that guy. And when he loses everything, he just gives up and he's done. He can't own it, so he dies. And so it shows that if you can't own your shit, you wither away and you die. And only when Nicholas Hoult sort of takes possession of his faculties and realizes he's not going to kill Orlok so that they can have a life together. He needs to not be free of Orlok, he realizes that it doesn't matter. He needs to be there for his wife. But he doesn't get that because, Lily Rose Depp is the one who realizes she needs to sacrifice herself and let Orlok be with her so that the light will kill him. He can't go and rest in his earth because they burned it and they destroyed it. And so the sun doesn't necessarily kill him, but the reality that he couldn't recharge is what kills him. But he's so addicted to her, he can't just get up and leave, even though he knows the sun is coming. He's like, I'm kind of getting laid here. I got to do it. He's addicted to her. And because he is unable to take possession of her, she's able to take possession of him. And so the two of them die together. That is something that I think really hones in on what Bram Stoker had written about Dracula. And so I think they did a great job with that. And it made a very interesting dynamic for all the character interactions. It was very extreme at times. It was sort of hot and cold. You didn't quite know what was going on, some of the scenes. So it wasn't was it perfectly executed? No, but no movie ever is. But I felt that it probably hit the emotional part of what it wanted to hit really well. If you don't care for the dialogue or some of the acting choices, not everybody on this film is a Shakespearean actor, for crying out loud. And Lily Rose Depp does a pretty good job. The chick from Deadpool is in it, the bald chick. She's in it. She plays kind of like the Lucy character. She did a great job. I kind of would have liked to have seen her in the main role and Lily Rose Depp not in that role. I just don't quite feel that. I didn't quite get all of her choices. It didn't really translate as well. And I think maybe somebody a little bit more seasoned, somebody who's been a, trained thespian might have done a better job with that. But it's more than passable. She does a great job. It's just, I just feel like the Nepo baby choice stands out, and I don't know that this was the right person for this role, in truth. Of course, she has to be naked in the movie, so I think that's a major reason why she's in it. But I wish that were not true, but the reality is, I think that is what it is. And the fact that she's a Nepo baby, I think, is another reason why it is what it is. She's kind of an it girl right now. And Eggers likes to cast the it girls. Like I aforementioned that Anya Taylor-Joy was in his previous films when she was the it girl. I think she would have done a much better job as the Lucy character. And the girl they cast as Lucy should have been the main character for this film. But that's a personal preference. But other than that, I think they did everything they needed to do with Nicholas Holt's character. He does a great job playing the John character in this. He plays Thomas, and it's funny because he played Renfield in a movie, so now he's played multiple people in the Dracula mythos. At this point, I'm just waiting for him to get a Dracula role. But he did a great job. He shows his diversity. Aaron Taylor-Johnson doesn't get a lot to do, but what he does do with it goes through a very wide range of emotions. He did a great job. They do a good job of showing how women have such a muted role in society and how they are subservient to men and how they're aware of it. They just don't know that there's another way. And when Lily Rose Depp tries to do that and be like, well, I don't have to do what men do, society just crushes them. And I think that is very relevant to show that and show how it used to be and why we're better off not being that way now, without just making it like, well, strong women characters can exist and they can do whatever they want and say whatever they want in these ancient times, and nothing would happen to them. No, exactly what happened to her would happen to them. You need to show that. It's very important, because that's how women have been oppressed for thousands of years. Is like, oh, did you talk back? Tie her up, drug her up, shut her up. It's just, it's not that people didn't care for them. They almost care for them the way they care for pets. It was really obnoxious. And so that makes you uncomfortable to watch. And I'm glad they did that, because it does show this is in the 1860s. This is how women got treated. So I think it's good. And when you see what a strong female character would be in that time, you get treated as a nutbar or a problem or a bitch and, not treated well. And you're more tolerated than you are respected. I think that was very relevant. And I think that does help you understand why she would want an Orlok who gives her that interest level. She mentioned she wanted tenderness and she wanted these things when nobody else gave it to her. And I think that was relevant. And they did a great job with that. And I just feel that this movie takes itself serious enough that you feel the Dracula feels. And it doesn't happen in every other Dracula film. Even Francis Ford Coppola's film, which arguably is the most literary correct interpretation, in the same way David Lynch's Dune is very accurate, you don't get the feel of what Frank Herbert wrote in David Lynch's Dune. Even though the loyalty's there, line for line, a lot of it's there and it's correct, you don't get what was behind what Frank was writing, why he was writing it. Whereas with the 2000 miniseries, which takes more liberties and is arguably less accurate in some ways than David Lynch's Spice Driver edit, that is more Frank Herbert than David Lynch's or Denis Villeneuve's. I think that's the only one that got what Frank Herbert was trying to do. In the same way, I feel this movie is the only one that really gets what Bram Stoker was trying to do. So I think that's relevant, and I think that this is a good time for that to come out, and I think, my friend Ryan said it best. He said, this movie will be an instant classic, and it will stand the test of time. You can watch this movie in 40 years, and it will still be relevant. And I think that's true, because they use all practical effects. I mean, there's CGI when you see the shots of the town and things like that, but the shadows, the rats, the blood, the prosthetics, everything's practical. So this will never age out. There isn't a shot where you see like you follow a bullet through a village and you're like, oh, there's the CGI. You never really know. You don't know when this movie was made, really. This could have been made in the 90s. This could have been made now. And that makes it timeless, which is another thing that I think is really going to be a staple of the director's style. What makes him an auteur is that his films are timeless and they could happen at any time in history. You'll never know what era this film was made. And I think that's cool. So yeah, I think that's a solid 9 out of 10 for me in terms of a movie. Does it have rewatchability? Dramas tend not to. I think it's more of like a horror movie in the classic way, like Alien is a horror movie. You know, the xenomorph is limited reveal and the interaction is very limited. It's more about how the characters react to the idea of the character than just full-blown Orlok being a douche. And so I think the rewatchability is okay, but I can't see watching this movie more than like once a year. I think you might have mental problems if you do. But it's definitely something where back in the day, if it was on like HBO, you might turn it on and watch some of it. Bill's performance is staggering. Like, I think he'll get all the awards. I really do. If he doesn't get Best Supporting Actor, I have no idea who's going to beat him. But it was unbelievable to think that this is the guy who played Pennywise. Like, I can't wrap my head around it. I also feel that with Willem Dafoe returning to Nosferatu as a different character has some real interesting nostalgia for me. And I think that's really cool. It's sort of like when, you watch Les Miserables and, Colm is the priest when he was most famously Jean Valjean on stage for so long. It kind of has that feel to it, sort of that, ooh, there they are. That's somebody who's relevant and has been this before. But yeah, I would recommend seeing this film highly. If you're a Dracula fan, you have to see it. You just have to. I would not recommend seeing this with anybody who is not heavily into horror or is easily uncomfortable by uncomfortable films. And I would definitely not bring any kids to it. This is nightmare fuel. Like, I would not bring children to this movie at all. You should not watch this if you're still capable of wetting the bed. But I think it was a 9 out of 10 for me. It was a great addition to the Dracula mythos, and it's something that I said to Ryan was like, the Dracula canon needed this film. This film needed to happen to bring Dracula back to a ground zero point that things can branch from. And I think it was very, very, like I've said, every other film that does a Dracula or a vampire going forward, this is going to be in their brain. This is going to be a bar that they have to carry with them. And yeah, it was good, man. I highly recommend it. I think you should see it in a theater if you can. If you're not, watch it on a big giant screen with a good sound system, because the score is phenomenal. The colors and the richness of the cinematography is phenomenal. Yeah, I actually had to watch it next to a guy sleeping next to me and an old couple bitching at each other half the movie, and I was still completely enthralled with the film. So yeah, great film. Definitely best film that I've seen in a theater in 2024 in terms of just a movie, like an actual piece of art. So thanks for checking it out. Thanks for checking out the channel. Go check out my diorama review video, which should be up now. And I will see you guys next year.